It's very important. Any one of you that has been on a board or a corporate board where you're working under Robert's Rules of Order, which I believe we are, you don't have to have verbatim minutes. That's for sure. But it's the kind of thing that if someone misses a meeting, he or she should be able to get the minutes and look at it and see, oh, good, that's good. I wanted to say that. Or see who's saying what. And then if we're going to set an agenda, I can see what we discussed before, and maybe it's not completed. We'll discuss it again. We can put new things on the agenda. But I think we've got to have better minutes. The other thing, we're a little confused, I am, about who's on the committee and who isn't. I guess right after December 31st, we lose the supervisor and one board member. Is that right?
Well, no, I'm still going to be on the board. And
I didn't mean you.
No, but it depends on committee assignments as far as who will probably be here as a board representative. But we really haven't gotten that far yet. But we'll know more about that in January after the organizational meeting.
Okay, yeah, well, the other issue is the issue between the morning meeting and the afternoon meeting. Once we decide that, I think Dale had a problem with Thursday or Friday. I'd like to get the opinion of people, and maybe by email. I think I assume everybody in the group is on email. So I mean, if we go home and I ask everybody, please send me an email whether you prefer morning or afternoon. And then it's just a question of picking a day. Some days, like the first Tuesday of the month, which I like, is taken. We'll have to sift through that, but I want to get a definite date for a meeting. If something comes up, if it's a holiday or something, we can always modify it. But I think it's better for everybody to kind of know when it is. This has been a little confusing. It was partly my fault. I want to thank you for your information in your email. I really didn't know exactly that I was supposed to call Mr. Backus, and that then it goes to Seth, and there are 2 newsletters in and out. I really didn't know that. I thought if I set a date and sent an email to everybody, that's the way it would be. But we have rules, and you got to publish these things, so I can understand that. Yes.
Do you mind if I just comment on something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Allison told me on the phone she has a family emergency and asked if I would be the proxy for today.
Excuse me, Marina.
That's why I'm here today.
Is that mic on
Marina?
your light?
I'm sorry, Marina, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. All right. First time I've been accused of not talking loud enough. Anyway, Allison had a family emergency and she asked me if I would be the proxy for today. And I think one of the reasons that the minutes were the way they were, just speaking on her behalf, is because we also got caught up in not knowing that the agenda, the minutes, everything had to be 24 hours. So everything was dashed off just to get it here on time, or else it wouldn't have been allowed to have been accepted. So I just wanted to share. It was confusing, and apparently the rules got changed. The New York State open meeting rules got changed in mid-November, and nobody knew about that.
Do you know what the rules are?
Well, my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, my understanding is,
Well, I am, and I don't know what they are.
well, what I was told,
Actually,
That's
can I
fine.
jump in? Can I jump in?
Yes,
If you wish, I will send you a copy of the open meeting law.
Good.
It is
Great.
available, it's publicly disseminated, and I will send you that amendment.
thank
Just
you.
so everyone is aware, my experience from being on the last task force is that at least 48 hours, we made it a point of at least 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting, we would present our minutes and also a copy of the agenda. So it's been standard procedure with the town that you present the agenda and the minutes within 24 hours. I think it's 48 hours.
Yeah, I was told it was
Before-
24, yeah,
Before the meeting.
yeah.
But I will provide everyone with a copy of the relevant section of the open meeting law that was amended,
Thanks.
so that we don't spend a lot of time talking about it without having it in hand. Additionally, Allison asked me, and I don't want to go out of order because we do have an agenda, and it seems it would be expeditious for us to go according to the agenda. If we cannot approve these minutes at this meeting, and that's the first item on the agenda after roll call, which we have not done as yet, then we can table that until the next meeting and have proper meeting minutes generated, and then approve that along with these meeting minutes on the next hearing date. So I will make that suggestion at this time so that we can move forward with our agenda.
And that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. We got to firm it up. We have to make the minutes so people can get them. I have to, however we decide when we're going to meet, make sure that the right people know about it and it gets published. I'll have to start a new habit of looking at the town bulletin. I don't think I have in 30
Excuse
years.
me.
You know.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair Zonderman. However, future meetings and the timeline is item 5 on the agenda, so we can discuss it at that time.
Yes,
I make a motion that we do the roll call and then move on to the first item regarding the approval of minutes.
I second that motion.
The approval of the minutes, those are the minutes you're talking
Okay.
about?
I
Okay,
think we should start with the roll call. That's how it is on the agenda here.
sure. And the agenda, I will take some control over because I want to say a few other things, and then we'll roll into what I think is what you're talking about. Do you have a list of the people?
Yes,
You want to call off the
Yes,
names
yes,
so we know who's here
Yes,
and who's
yes.
absent?
yes. Supervisor Yasmin Syed. Councilperson Bill McPartland.
Here,
Controller Ismat Alam.
Here.
Chief of Police Jordan Cochan. Town Attorney Paul Briggs. Police Officer from the PBA Representative Jeffrey Relation. Manuel Amato. Dale Black Pennington.
Present by video.
Marina Proc Franchild here. Allison Marinucci. Paul Zonderman.
Here. There'll be another thought somewhere down the line. If there are people who simply don't come, I think we'll have to perhaps ask them or have a little vote if they, and have the board appoint somebody else, however those people are picked. I mean, we should have a group that, I don't know how many are absent, but we've got 2 on the board, 3, I guess. No, that's me and.
do we know who that is and the phone number up there?
What's that?
That ending in 97? We have someone on the video
Hi.
call. Yes, hello, who's
It is-
that?
Hi, my name's Ellen DeViro, and I'm a community member, and I'm
and I was driving, so I asked to have the link sent to me so that I could listen.
Oh, great. No, thank you. We just want to record your attendance here at the meeting.
Yeah, I thought you were doing just. I'm not a member of the committee. I'm just a town person. That so I'm not a. Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's
Well,
fine.
I know that there is a difference. Like, I'm not on your committee. I'm just present. So yeah. That's all.
Just would you, do you know how to spell her name?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So my name is Ellen, Ellen, and my last name is DeViro, D as in David, A, V as in Victor, I-E-R-O, and I live at 1322 Hawthorne Road in Niskiuna.
Thank you.
Is there anything
You're
in,
welcome.
anything in particular that you're interested in or your background is in?
I was a member of the task force, or the reinvention task force originally, and I am interested in how this is being proceeded and moving forward. And I'm just that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
let me
Thank you.
just mention a couple of more things.
Excuse
that
me,
I
Chair
just wanted.
Zonderman?
What?
Hi. The video went off. All I see are boxes. Is there any way we could get the video back on?
Seth,
We'll get the IT
try to
guy.
get that in a
We're trying to
second.
get the IT person, Dale.
So in staying with the agenda, so
Actually, 1 minute, Chair Zonderman, I had a second point. I would just like to adhere to the agenda. I agree with you regarding attendance issues, and we can discuss that as an additional item after we get through the agenda. I'm just a recommendation. And just as an aside, the items that were sent out, I'm not sure if the suggestion was in there that we have the creation of bylaws. And in the bylaws, we would address how absences are treated. For example, if an individual were to have 3 or more absences, then the chair would have to address it with the individual and then ask them if they really want to be a part of the task force. And maybe individuals may resign or wish not to be, or maybe they will change and then attend the meetings. However, bylaws may assist us with those general rules so that we do not spend a lot of our meeting time discussing these matters.
That's a good idea. I obviously, if there are bylaws
Yes.
that control all meetings, this meeting, I mean, I have the little pamphlet, Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, I know it pretty well, but if there are procedures, it's interesting. We should know about it.
well, we don't have anybody from legal here with us today, but I think your suggestion, Dale, is well taken. So we're going to have to look into that for the bylaws and what those requirements are. You had
I'm sorry, Bill,
yes.
I was talking about bylaws for the task force, and I had already actually discussed them with Allison.
You have them, is what you're
because
saying?
For the last task force, we developed bylaws, which assisted us in having a framework to get our work done, so that, responsibilities would be spelled out for the various officers. For example, we have a chair and a secretary. And also, we would have a process, for example, how to handle members' non-participation or absences, and that could be spelled out in the bylaws. I can draft the bylaws, but I don't want to take this meeting up with issues in an ad hoc manner.
Yes, I would agree.
My motion is that we go through the agenda, and additional issues can be raised at the end of the meeting
Yep.
as new matters.
Yep.
I I am going to rule that that motion is out of order. I have some preliminary matters that I just wanted to go into, and then I'll tell you what I thought we should be doing.
Okay.
I had a long conversation with the police department the other day. And there is a discrimination policy. They do have classes on it every 6 months, apparently. There is a collective bargaining agreement, which I believe talks about discipline and how it should be rendered. So I don't think we're really involved in discipline. We're not hearing those types of things, but there are things that they've done and they do it regularly. And I am most concerned about the claims of discrimination and abuse by one employee of another. We want to make sure that everybody understands what sexual harassment is, and you understand that we'll have lectures which define it and little movies and videos on the topic. And generally, the rule is going to be the first time it happens, you'll get a warning, and the second time it happens, you're gone. That was what was done in another place where I worked. I'm not saying that's the thing. Then there's a distinction that comes up between having discrimination and acting out implicit and explicit discrimination. A person can think poorly of a certain set of people, but as long as he doesn't act out and do something in his day-to-day relations, good luck to him, that's his business. But when they act out, then that's going over the line. And if a police officer has more than one of these little things acting out, I think there should be a psychiatric evaluation, just to make sure he still has the qualities or can apply them, which he had when he was accepted as a police officer. Now, that is what's got a high priority to me, because I'm walking into something where there's articles in the paper and things going on, and we look, it's kind of embarrassing. And I think that we can talk about all these other things that are in the plan, but I think we ought to get into this other material soon, and we can start working on it. Now, that being said, as I recall, we had some people volunteer to look into various aspects of the plan, and that they were going to report back or tell us what's happening and what they want. I don't know how many of those people are here.
Judge Zonderman?
Sure.
Jordan, I had sent you the latest.
It's on.
Yeah, a few of us got together, we put together a 38-page document that breaks, which I have here. And I forwarded a copy of this to Jordan Cochan. The reason that this wasn't distributed to the whole group is that the secretary who was going to distribute it, she has a copy, had IT issues. So that's why this wasn't distributed. This is broken down into 5 tables. The first table talks about the implementation plan, And the next four tables, A, B, C, and D, break down the collaborative recommendations and the findings into categories. I just want to read you the four categories. Just give me 1 second. Category A was functions of the police. Category B was employing smart and effective policing standards and strategies. Category C was fostering community-oriented leadership culture and accountability. And category D was recruiting and supporting excellent personnel. All of the collaborative, the Niskayuna collaborative recommendations and all of the CNA findings, which really are recommendations, were grouped together accordingly into one of these four tables. I'm wondering, and this will be distributed. Allison's IT is now working again, and she will be distributing this within the next day or so. I'm wondering if we can, with your permission, Judge Zonderman, if we can go to item number 2, because this segues directly into that.
Yeah, well, you're the only one of those people that's here that we talked about it, so whatever you can give us is fine.
Terrific.
I'm
All right.
going to jump in.
Actually,
because-
that's
I'm
not
sorry,
true.
Marina.
Dale was another
Excuse me,
person.
Marina, myself, and Allison reviewed all of our documents, and we compiled this implementation plan along with the categories. So
That's wonderful.
Of the three of us, myself and Marina are here.
Dale, could you possibly speak a little bit louder or sit closer to the mic?
Oh,
We lost Dale.
Dale,
Yeah,
you're gone.
we'll have to have you check in again.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, Dale, there you are.
Hi, Dale.
I'm back.
You're
Hello?
louder this time. Thank you.
We can see you.
I
Yeah,
can't
we can
hear
see.
anyone now.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Because you have two names up there. Maybe you need to turn something off.
I think that usually happens sometimes if the person re-signs in, it really doesn't get rid of the other one, but that's fine. It's not
Okay.
an issue.
Hello?
Can I get
Dale,
back?
can you still hear us? She can't hear us. I think she's coming back in.
Can we get back to one thing, trying to stick with the agenda? I have
Yes.
to agree with that. There was a motion, I think, made about the minutes to postpone the approval of the minutes of last meeting until the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, we had a second on that.
Well, I didn't accept that motion.
You didn't accept that motion. Okay. So would you like to approve, then would you like a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Sure.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting then. So we can stick to the agenda a little bit.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've accepted the minutes of the last meeting.
Really quickly, just
Hello?
as a
Can you
point of
hear me
order,
now?
just, oh, as a point of order, really quickly, was there a second to
You can
Bill's
hear me?
motion?
Excuse me?
There needed to be a second to Bill's motion.
I
so-
second the motion.
Perfect. And
Thank
we are
you.
all in favor. You're welcome.
What, would you repeat the motion, please?
We just second the motion to approve the minutes.
Oh,
Okay?
okay, sure. But we'll understand that we're going to have real minutes that you can look at and know generally what happened.
Yes.
Now, let's
So
continue on.
Dale was going to be talking. She's gone again.
Well, you were going, you were sort of interrupted in the middle of it.
Yeah, so anyway, one of the things that came up in talking with Chief Cochan today is that according to the chief, he spoke with Elena, and she said that we're not allowed to break into subcommittees. So I would like to know, does that mean maybe the word subcommittees is not acceptable, but what about working groups? Are we allowed to, because we have about 140 items on these four tables. are we allowed to break into working groups to work through these items? Because we can't do it, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, coming here for 1 hour a month. Even if, as a group, we could get through an item, a meeting, that's 12 items, we'd be here for the next 10 years.
I think
plus.
that one you ought to make a motion for.
So I would like to make a motion that this task force be allowed to break into working groups so that we can tackle the 4 tables, which we're obligated to implement based upon the collaborative's findings and the CNA audit's recommendations.
Is there a
findings and
second to the
recommendations.
motion?
I'll second that motion.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Right?
I,
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you. There's one other aspect of this that's also confusing. In the implementation plan, there's wording about as implemented by the town of Niskayuna. And I'm looking to see if I can find the exact words. Yeah, could you please just read that sentence?
I think I'm on now.
There it is, I have it.
You have it?
Here.
Okay.
This is what it says at the bottom of the first table where they're talking about the implementation plan. It was further resolved that the creation of the Niskayuna Police Reform Implementation Task Force is to ensure that the recommendations promulgated by the Niskayuna Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Steering Committee and CNA audit are reviewed and implemented as appropriate, and to ensure that the discussion does not stop here. I would like to have a conversation about the word appropriate. What does that mean legally?
Want to
So-
read the sentence again?
Yes, sir. It was further resolved that the creation of the Niskayuna Police Reform Implementation Task Force is to ensure that the recommendations promulgated by the Niskayuna Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Steering Committee and CNA audit are reviewed and implemented as appropriate.
Okay, it's a little hanger that they don't have to do exactly what we say, because if there's a higher authority who reviews it, they can see whether it's appropriate or not. In other words, if we recommended something to the board and the board didn't think it was appropriate, they're the authority.
I'm not sure I fully understand what our leeway is.
Well, we make recommendations. And so whoever the recommendations go to, they're the ones who decide. I suppose maybe they agree to accept all our recommendations. That would be wonderful.
But this is where I'm confused, and I'm just going to speak plainly. You have powers that be, and then you have Mario Cuomo, who says the powers that be up until now have fallen short of being equitable. So if you have recommendations and you go to the powers that be, I'm not talking about Niskayuna per se, any powers that be in any municipality, and you give them total determination of whether or not a recommendation is legitimate or not, totally avoids the whole purpose of having a task force in the first place. So I don't accept, with all due respect, I don't accept that as being fruitful.
Okay. The word used is recommendation. Recommendation is not an order or a directive. So we can wait till we find out if we get a situation like that. We can assert our position, but I think that a higher authority would decide it. There are a lot of little rules that they have here in the town. I'll just give you an example of one.
Okay.
when the Immigration Service started getting hot and grabbing immigrants, and they started bringing charges against, they looked at the records in our courts, and for certain offenses, they started to proceedings to kick the people out of the country. And that became quite common. ICE was down the street, and what we started to do basically was to warn people, if you care to plead guilty, all this stuff, we would add something about immigration so that they would know they might have a problem. So just in order to understand what this was all about, I called the Iceman and said, come on over, we'll have a little luncheon meeting. We'll have the DA for our court, we'll have the public defender, and others that are involved in this. We want to know what you are doing so that we can create a warning or know where we are on this. So it was fine. It was a really good meeting. I went to Gershon's and I got $100 platter or something like that. And it was a good meeting. And then I went up to the comptroller and said, I'd like to be reimbursed. We had this meeting here, it's a business meeting. And they said, oh no, there's a rule that you can't serve food at any function of the town unless the whole town is invited. We can't pay that. Okay, so, I paid it. But there are rules like that. They're around. I don't know where they are exactly, but I suppose when it comes to money, the comptroller would know that. All right, let us continue.
I would like
Go ahead.
to just give a quick example. Suppose in a municipality, somebody said that there should be diversity and equity training for the police force that would include an understanding that there's systemic racism in America. And let's say that the police chief, I'm not talking about Niskayuna, the police chief said, no, we don't agree with that recommendation, we're fine. That would be nullifying the work that the Reinvention Collaborative did. So my understanding, and I'm wondering perhaps if Dale could speak to this, because you were on the collaborative and now you're on this task force, what your understanding is of the word appropriate.
Thank you, Marina. In fact, I did have my hand raised. My understanding of the word appropriate in this context, and if from reading all of the documents, including the resolutions that are appropriate, 2021-76, which is a town board resolution empowering us to move forward with implementation of these recommendations. Our limits have to do with the impact on the budget and an implementation framework. So my understanding is that matters that can be reasonably implemented with all deliberate speed should be implemented. And where there is a budget impact, we, as the implementation task force, will make a recommendation as to how to expeditiously implement matters where there is in fact an impact on the budget, or how long it will take based upon that limiting factor, the impact in the budget.
That may be a question for the town attorney, a question of interpretation of how you deal with those things. I
Certainly.
don't see that
But
really.
my reading of this is that those are our limiting factors, the impact on the budget and the implementation timeframe. So that's what each subgroup will be looking at with respect to their recommendations.
And Dale is correct, so I'll just jump in here, speaking on behalf of the town board, and Bill can correct me otherwise, but Dale's interpretation of what the intention was is correct. And as we go through this process, and if you reread the resolution, the way it was phrased, where appropriate quite literally means that it's subject to the determination of this task force. And that's why we have members of the police department here who are serving on this task force. If it is deemed by the task force that a measure is either something that can be implemented expeditiously or not, what the budget impact is, or, and I don't anticipate this happening, but if it's the determination of the task force that a recommendation is not appropriate, that is within the authority of the task force. But like I said, that's just an example. I don't believe that that may occur. However, it can. And that's subject to the purview of the task force. But I'll go back to, really quickly, if I can, to subcommittees. Just be cognizant of open meetings law when you structure your subcommittees. If there's a quorum meeting, you're going to want to make sure that that's open to the public, that those meetings are posted, that minutes are taken, and if there are any decisions or determinations made in those meetings, that those are reflected. That's all. Just a PSA on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah, thank
Yasmin.
you.
And that's why we have members of the town board here at these meetings and on this committee, the supervisor and myself, the police chief, and Marina. I think your concern was maybe that, to put it in plain language, that this committee doesn't have any teeth or any power, but that is not correct. We do have, this committee does have power to get things implemented and get things accomplished. That was the reason for putting this together and doing it in this manner and having everyone, all the stakeholders in the room, in the meetings, and developing the plans and getting it done right.
Well, that's correct, except subject to the budget. Those are the big words. I mean, you've got a whole issue of taxes, you got an issue of budget.
Right.
So I would
So,
like,
you know, however the board handles the budget, it would be subject to it. Let me ask a question. One of the things that we could have discussed earlier was the body cameras. Oh, what was the other thing? There were two things. Well, let's just take body cameras. We recommended body cameras, or the other thing was we would recommend, I believe, a 30-person roll call on the force, so to speak. These are obviously budget. How do we know, let's say we make that, well, tell us what's happening on each one of those. Are they going to happen, or?
So, yeah, so just to be clear, just to clarify, because I didn't want to jump over anybody. The reason this came up was when we had this meeting on the other day, Allison, Marina, and myself, I just wanted to ensure that we all had an understanding of, because we're all new to this. And there's a lot of ground rules and there's a lot of things, legal implications and otherwise. And we talked about that briefly. And so Marina and I kind of had talked offline about, we just really need to be cognizant of what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, what the intention is, what the intention isn't, so that we're all working as a team to be as expeditious as we can to implement as many of these things as we can moving forward. We just wanted to make sure we were all speaking the same language, we all had the same interpretation of what was going on. But to answer your question, Judge, as far as the body cameras go, we've done the research. We know what the different systems are. We understand the ones that we think are appropriate for our needs for a department. That's really impactful to the budget. And we're waiting on answers from some grant monies that have been applied for. So that's kind of where we are with regards to that. But I also explained, just touching on some of the things Marina said, there are a lot of legal implications to some of these recommendations specific to the body cameras. It's not as simple as saying, even though we all agree we need body cameras, police department included, everybody wants body cameras. If we had the money tomorrow, go buy body cameras. Well, there's legal implications to that. You have to have redaction software. You have to have, through FOIL requests, a legalized process that the town attorney is reviewing what's being released and it isn't in conformance with that redaction. So what I had said in that meeting was, we really need to be cognizant of, not only are we being charged with, hey, let's review these things, let's implement them as appropriate, and let's determine impactful or not impactful to the budget, but there may need to be also that conversation of those legal ramifications for the different areas that we're going to discuss, and we need to just be cognizant of that.
I think,
Can I say
I think
something?
you could get an
Hi.
answer to that
This is,
fairly quickly about the privateness or the publicness of what's on those films.
Ismat is trying to speak.
Yes, Ismat.
can I say something? Hi, this
Yes,
is
go
Ismat. So, I first of all, my apologies. I could not be at the last meeting because I had a family emergency. So my apologies for that. As far as the budget is concerned, we, the supervisor and I, we looked into some of the recommendations made, and we have implemented part of them into the budget for 2022. As far as the body cams are concerned, there are two things we are doing. We have applied for not one, not two, but 3 different grants. And we are through a very good grant consultant that we have. So she is working on them. And the fourth thing we have done is that we have included that in our capital budget for next year. So in case, God forbid, if we don't get those grants. So, but with the budget impact, Judge, you are absolutely right. We have to look at that. It's because anything that we add to the budget means it's going to be, taxpayers' money that he'll be paying. So
Yes.
I completely understand that. And if Marina, you sent me an email, I apologize. I was out, I had family emergency. What can I do? But I'll be regular part of this meeting again.
Well, you have to weigh the added cost of some of this with the added cost that the town pays when they get sued and they lose the lawsuit, because they might have won it if they had the camera on there to show how abusive the particular person is. I mean, there's 2 sides to the picture.
You're absolutely right, Judge, about that. I agree with you 100%. That's why we have budgeted that.
Well, I hope they're considering it. Go ahead.
May I say something?
Sure.
Thank you. So what we were thinking of was in this version of the 38-page document, this is not the latest, because this says that there'll be 10 people on this task force. And then my understanding is that there was a resolution down the road that added the PBA representative, which puts 11 people on the task force. And the way that it's broken down with the PBA representative is 6 people from the town, and then 5 citizens like myself, who are not, like on a town board or a lawyer or a judge or anything along those lines. So what we were thinking was, since we have 4 tables, A, B, C, and D, which I've discussed a few moments ago, that we were thinking that one town person like yourself, like Ismat, should be on a board with at least, there has to be a town person with at least 1 community person, because there's not an even number, and that after a certain amount of time, we would rotate it. So for example, suppose I was on the block A, determining the functions that the Niskayuna police perform. The way I see this happening would be that whoever would be on that committee, working group, subcommittee, whatever terminology we'll agree to utilize, we would go to Ismat, and we would go down the list, Ismat, and we would find out which things have budgetary implications, we would find out which things have had money allocated because of your awareness of that money was needed for 2022. And we would also identify what has not been flagged yet and how long it would take, what would be the parameters of implementation should we go that route. The next thing, again, just talking about one table, right, determining the functions that the Niskayuna police perform, then we would also at the same time go to Jordan. Jordan would actually, at that point, talk to his peers, and he would find out what has any contractual ramifications, like in terms of, like, for example, one of the recommendations is a civilian review board, right? What do I know about civilian review boards? Next to nothing. But Jordan would be able to tell us all of the implications, all the moving parts, because we need to be aware of the details. This really, being, the way I see it as an individual, being impactful is becoming familiar with all of the far-reaching tentacles for each one of these recommendations. It's going to require a lot of research. Then the third thing would be logistics, and that would be timeline, figuring out how long something takes. And it's not just how long it gets it to move through the various committees on the town, but let's say, for argument's sake, that Jordan needed a piece of police equipment, like we'll talk about the cameras. And because of supply chain issues, let's say a certain metal that would go into a semiconductor wouldn't be available, and therefore there'd be a delay in getting the cameras because there was a missing component, right? We need to be aware of all this. So this is all very, very, very involved. So I would like to know if people are in agreement that as preparatory measures that, like, that, for example, some of us could meet with you, Ismat, and actually set aside block of time and go over things on a line item by line item basis. That Jordan, you would do the same thing. I'm not sure who would figure out the timeline, but whoever would be the best person to do that would help us.
Yeah, and I think the timelines are something that are obviously subject to change, as you just stated, based upon the logistics, even inclusive of the body cams, depending on which one we go with. Are we building an internal mechanism to house the data here? Is it going to a cloud-based? Does that cost more? So those are different conversations. But also with the timelines, we should establish some sort of goals that we're checking along the way to get towards that timeline. So we're having incremental goals on the way towards that timeline, if at all possible. Because like I said, things definitely evolve. I mean, all it takes is all the good intentions of the world, and then something, becomes a barrier or hurdle, uncontrollable or unforeseen, and then we have to work through those things together. So I think that that's a good idea. I do.
I would like to make a motion. I'm not sure if I already made this motion or not, that we be allowed to break into the 4 working groups and then meet with the appropriate town personnel to actually be able to have the budgetary constraints, to have them be known, the timeline constraints, and the contractual constraints known. That's my motion. Does anybody second that?
Just to clarify real quick, Marina. So the intention of that, and I'm not speaking for you, but I'm asking, is to then gather that information, to bring it back to the group, to then discuss it? Or what is, if these subgroups or committees or whatever we're calling them, go with what they've been tasked to do, they go get those answers, are we then bringing it back to a regular meeting to discuss those findings? Or how are we going about it from there?
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Let me reword it, okay? I'm going to reword it and then make a succinct motion, okay? My rewording is that there's a lot of moving parts. The 3 prongs have to be looked at: contractual, budgetary, and time frame, right? That has to be looked at for almost every single one of the recommendations. So my immediate recommendation, my immediate motion is that we be allowed to break into working groups. That's my immediate motion, right? Does anybody second that?
Could I
If I
add
may,
something to it?
I've kept quiet. I haven't said very much the whole way. I have no problem with subcommittees. I just want transparency. You know what I mean? So if people do their own research and come up with information, as long as it's brought back to the group and everyone's on the same page and we know what we're doing,
Yes.
there's no issues. There's no reason for that to be an issue. The only thing I would say is we got to prioritize and then execute on these things. You know what I mean? So we need to put whatever the biggest issue is, let's address that. I know that Chief Cochan could probably be a liaison as far as the things that we already do. So maybe we can line that up. And I don't know, maybe that's already what you started to do in your subcommittee, but check off the boxes of things that are already being done that may have been things that were in the report that they wanted to have done.
Yes.
There's a lot of things in there that it's a small amount of time. We have an hour, right? There's a lot of things in there that can just be checked off. By all means, looked over again, but there's things in there that are done,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
would-
that's all I would suggest, is that we just
I
have
wanna-
transparency and
just-
everyone's on the same
yes.
page.
You and
Could
I.
I add something to your
Sure.
list
Yes, yes.
as something to consider, and that is liability? And the reason I say that is because when something happens and there's a suit against the town, let's say for discrimination, and the court is going to look at that, one of the first things they look at is what kind of plan do you have to prevent this kind of
Yes.
thing? Have you been serious about
Mhm.
this?
Yes.
Have you followed it? Have you appointed someone to look into it, you
Yes.
know? That's a consideration about some of these. Now, the thing about liability is, I mention that because it's very important. A drunken person is arrested and he's swearing and pushing and struggling with, let's say, a female officer and calling her all kinds of names, and she makes the arrest, and then the lawyer comes along and says, he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. And all the officer has to say, you want to come in and see the video? And that shuts them up and they settle the case. That happens. That happens an awful lot. So liability is an issue.
Yes. And you and I, again, speaking as an individual, we are in a complete agreement on that. I would like to address what you just brought up. Number one,
Excuse me, Marina,
transparency.
can I jump in? I've had my hand raised.
Yes,
for
please,
the
sorry.
longest.
Go ahead, Dale.
And I'd just like to, I agree with everything that's been said. And, however, I have a suggestion as to the formation of the subgroups, the committees. I do believe that all 4 committees should be working at the same time. And the committee should be coming up with an implementation plan for the recommendations that they have listed. I suggest that we have those committees formed by the next meeting. For example, and so I would like to second your motion to establish the 4 subcommittees at this time. And maybe we can move forward with this before the next meeting date through
Yes, ma'am.
email and meetings.
Can I add one more thing to it?
Yes.
Yes,
Sure,
Ismet,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. So I agree with Judge Zonderman, exactly what he's saying, and training and looking at the implicit and explicit biases, the training, how do we monitor that? What are some of the policies that need to be changed, look into? What do you think? And I'm opening it to the team. There's a separate subcommittee, or maybe it's part of one of those subcommittees.
From Elijah.
Thank you.
Ismail, just to clarify, you're asking to add the liability perspective as one of the subcommittees? Is that what you're stating? I don't think we're clear on that.
And the training, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. well,
And
we
maybe
can
it becomes
cover
part
that.
of one of the subcommittees, or maybe it's a separate subcommittee. And again, I understand completely what Judge is saying.
I think Dale's hand
May
is
I
raised.
just say that liability is a consideration that all of the subcommittees should be making when they take a look at the recommendations. The issue of liability comes along with implementing these recommendations. So say, for example, as Judge Zonderman raised earlier, there may be some implementation, there may be some liability that comes as a result of the implementation of body cams.
It
So
works
as
both
such,
ways. All
the
these people with their
implementation
cameras,
group
have-
should be looking into that issue at the time that they establish their plan for recommendation, their plan for implementation of that recommendation.
If I may, my only point of consideration from the hat that I wear and the seat that I sit in, when we talk about forming subgroups to come up with implementation plans, again, there's a lot of brilliant minds in this group, but not all of them can necessarily speak to the confines and constructs of the inner workings of the police department that we're now attempting to implement things through. And I'm just worried that we're going to spend time discussing implementation plans and not necessarily have all the information that could change that direction of that discussion. And so that was my fear all along, is just how do we make it as expeditious as possible, which is why that first meeting, I kind of started going through CNA's recommendations, because I was trying to as quickly as possible, explain where we were on the status of those first, to then move on to the other collaborative findings. And then my intention was to do those as well, because again, I think that it's a good intention to have subgroups, but if no one can speak to the implementation process from the confines and constructs of within the police department, we may be missing pieces of information that may change that discussion within that subgroup, if that makes sense.
That's why, in
Jordan,
addition to implementation, I'm just adding one thing parenthetically. In addition to implementation and budget, which is already spelled out, in what the Reinvention Collaborative did, we also added contracts, meaning what constraints.
The
from
PBA
from
collective
police. So
bargaining
we-
agreement, things of that nature, yes.
So yes, we
Yes, okay.
understand.
Okay.
but also, may I just, this is sort of awkward, I'm sorry, I apologize for jumping in and interrupting. This is only because I'm on video, so I apologize. My hand raising hasn't been recognized. Jordan, in response to your statement and also Marina's statement, we are a task force, and as such, I believe that the members of each committee should be accessing the expertise that we have on the task force. So even if you are on, say, the functions of the police subgroup, I believe that individuals on the fostering, on the subgroup C, fostering community orientation, leadership, culture, and accountability, are going to reach out to both you and ISMAT and also the town attorney in making their recommendations. That's part of the research, is to make sure that we reach out to our expertise that's on our task force before we make these recommendations for the plan of implementation, and utilize the resources within the task force itself. So the work that's done by the subcommittees shouldn't be work done in a vacuum or just based on our own personal proclivities. It should be work that we're going to use the resources of everyone on the task force to do. It's just that the subgroups are breaking up so that they can get the nitty-gritty work done outside of this 1 hour meeting that we have each month, so we can actually get things done and move forward.
You clarified it amazingly. Thank you so much for explaining that then, because again, that's exactly what I needed to hear, because I didn't want everyone to put their efforts towards something and not necessarily utilize those resources. And I couldn't have said it better if I had a week to think about it. So thank you for explaining that.
Very well said, Dale. Very, very well said.
Thank you. Judge Zonderman,
Yes,
thank you so much for that moment. Can we move forward with the meeting?
yes. Is there any more discussion on the motion? You want to repeat the motion?
I make a motion that the task force, what's the word I'm looking for? Be permitted, be allowed to divide into working groups to do the due diligence in research for each one of the 4 areas that I have mentioned, and that we utilize the resources of the town in order to have proper implementation plans.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Okay. yes, ma'am.
Any objections?
Motion is carried.
Motion is carried.
Did
Let
you
me
have
just write
something?
that down.
And may I just recommend that by email, individuals indicate to Judge Zonderman, our chair, which subcommittee they wish to be on once everyone receives a copy of the document, the plan?
Yeah, I'd like to see, well, I have all the reports.
This is, you can have this,
Okay,
and you'll be getting an update. And I just want to show you something. You see it has the red over here?
yeah,
Because that was done on 12/7, so the next one that
Wow.
you get will have a different date. I just want to make this very, very clear. The date that we'll call the 38 pager is sent out, that has all of the recommendations and findings for all of the 4 groups. As it is changed in any way, shape, or form, it will be revved, and rather than giving it a revision number, it will have the date of the revision. So it is a working document, it is a living document, it will change. And that's very important, to not think that because you have a document that it's the latest and greatest. It will be changing as we go through time.
were there any other committees that wanted to, Ms. Black, do you have anything else you want to say?
Yes.
I wanted to say,
No,
go
no,
on,
no.
The
Dale, did you
document,
have
we're
something?
sort of one step behind in this meeting because this document should have gone out and everyone should have had an opportunity to look at it so that we can vote on its approval. At this point, we're talking about it as though it's been accepted by all members of the task force, and it has not. So we're sort of one step behind where we were supposed to be at this meeting. So I'm just going to, I have a copy of it, and if you don't get it in a day or two, please let me know, and I will send you this document. And you can address any need for revision in a group email to everyone in the group. And
Dale, I'm going to be
it can be
updating it.
revised as necessary upon consensus.
Dale, you don't
I'm
have
sorry, Maria.
you don't have the latest because it hasn't been formulated yet. We have to add that the PBA representative is also on the task force. So I will, by tomorrow, be sending a copy. I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy by tomorrow of the latest and greatest, and it will have tomorrow's date on it.
Fantastic.
All
I
right.
appreciate that.
And the
And
reason
then
that,
I would just make a motion
yes,
that once it's reviewed, let's give it maybe until if it goes out tomorrow, today is Wednesday, maybe by Monday, everyone can submit whether or not they accept the document. We can do a vote through email, and then we can move forward with this as an official groundwork for our plan.
I'm not sure we can do that. I like the idea of voting by email. It makes it very easy, particularly when there's a snowstorm. But we may, this is pretty strict. We meet monthly and we have a recording made of the meetings. I'm a little hesitant to have too many outside meetings that aren't recorded. On the other hand,
Okay.
if you're working on
I agree with
research, you
you.
certainly can work together.
I agree with you. The only thing then is I would suggest that each member of the task force comment on the document so that we could have the final document submitted to the town, or our initial working document submitted to the town before our next meeting, and take a vote at that time.
You're talking about this whole document?
Yes,
It's
I
38
need to have a
pages.
copy of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna recommend or not this, the whole thing for at the next meeting?
Yes, whether or not we're using it as our implementation framework.
What was said at the last meeting, it was a motion that was passed. Dale, tell me if I'm correct in your memory. What I remember is that it was passed that everybody who's on this task force is responsible for being aware, like really aware, of all of the recommendations made by both the Reinvention Collaborative and also
Yes.
by CNA. This document that I just gave you, the 38 pages, it took the 300 pages and it made it manageable. So the format made it manageable. It was categorized
That's great.
into the 4 tables to make it manageable, and that would create the 4 different groups. So if I'm understanding you correctly, Dale, what you're saying, I just want to reiterate to make sure I understand you correctly, is that within the next day, as I said I would, I make sure that everybody gets a copy of this document, okay? And that then by email, people will let us know whether they accept the format of the document, the format. This is exactly what was
Right.
taken from the 300 pages, right?
Right.
That's part of
Right.
the documentation and appendices of the implementation resolution, which the town passed last year, all right? There's no editing, there's not one new word put in it. It's exactly what comes out of those 300 pages. It's just formatted a little bit differently. And then once everybody by email agrees that we can proceed with this format, because it's an easy to work with format, then we will actually vote on codifying this document when we meet a month from now.
Yes, or accepting the document.
Accepting,
Since
that's
we
what I
don't
meant.
want to vote outside of this public meeting. The other thing is, Marina, if we're going to break up into subgroups, the subgroups have to have a basis for what they're working on. And we've broken down in this document, the recommendations have been broken down into 4 subgroups.
Yes,
So this would be the basis for our forming subgroups.
yes,
The subgroups are for people to look over the recommendations and start implementing them, making recommendations for implementation. So we need to have the plan in place, and then people volunteer and sit on the subgroups and start working.
yes. So I think that you're making actually more than one motion. I think the first motion that you're making is that people on this task force, once they receive the document, that they actually look it over and agree via email that it's acceptable. And then we will vote on the acceptance of the document at the next meeting.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right, can somebody make it succinct? Can somebody reword it succinctly, please?
Let me say this. Do you want it to be sent to the secretary? Do you want the email of me? How are you visualizing?
I'm visualizing forwarding it to Allison, whose computer is now working,
Okay,
and Allison will distribute it to everybody.
okay. Was that in the form of a motion?
Dale, could you please put this into the form of a motion? I'm too wordy.
So I'll just jump in really quickly. I don't think you
Okay,
need to,
motion.
I don't think you need to make a motion actually, because if you just reflect that we had this discussion and we're all generally, and I won't say generally, I think we all understand what the expectations are for the next meeting.
Yes.
You don't need a formal motion. You can if you'd like, but you don't need one necessarily. So when we do our other committees, we have a general understanding that going forward, certain person's going to distribute the agenda ahead of time and we'll all look it over. And if there are any things to add, that we will add to that agenda. So this is sort of the same process. So like I said, if you'd like to make a formal motion, just
You know,
to
that might
submit
be,
that, you can, but you
that
don't
might
have
be a better way to do it. Maybe we should stay away from sending emails to each other, you know, sort of doing business outside of the building.
Well, people have to get the documents somehow.
Yeah,
You can't
well-
hand it to them and have it, and have them
And
read
then to be
38
discussed
pages.
at the next,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it has to be
Okay.
distributed in advance.
So why don't we do this? Why don't you send out the email to everyone, so everyone has it?
Yes.
We all look at it and we discuss it at the next meeting. I think that's where we're all at, right? That's what
So
we're trying to get
that
at.
was the first part. Okay, so
Okay.
we've agreed that we don't need a motion for that. The second part of this is that when people receive it via email, that they decide what committee they would like. They decide 2 committees that they would like to be on, because maybe everybody wants to be on the same committee, right? Or they should prioritize A, B, C, and D in which order they would like to start. I think that's a better way to go, and then that will be compiled at a later
Just to
date.
try and get it out of the way before the next meeting. I agree with that. I
Okay.
don't have any problem
Does
with that.
that have to be a motion, or is that just a
I
discussion?
don't think so.
Okay.
No, you don't need a motion for
So now
that.
I have a question where I'm confused. When you had talked about transparency and
Right.
somebody else talked about it, I think Judge Zonderman, you also talked about transparency. So when we meet in the committees, you know, the subgroups, working groups, whatever we decide we're going to call ourselves, does that have to be done here so that it's like publicly recorded? How does that work?
That one I'd leave for Paul Briggs, I think.
Yeah, and I would agree. Paul Briggs, as the parliamentarian, would be able to tell you if a quorum is established at any of the subcommittee meetings, and there's a specific number for what would constitute a quorum, and he could tell you that. And in which case, if a quorum is formed, you would have to make sure that you are in compliance with open meetings law. If a quorum is not formed, however, and it's purely a work group and discussions are being had, but no decisions are being made, that generally is acceptable. But
okay.
again, you would just want to make sure that you're qualifying everything you're doing with the parliamentarian. So, and that's our town attorney, Paul Briggs.
Thank you so much. That's very, very helpful. And just as a point of clarification, the way I'm envisioning it, just as one person, is not for the working group to make decisions, but for the working group to have conversations and to say, what have you researched? Dissemination of what we each are researching and finding out, to boil it down.
We're bringing ideas to the group, right?
Yes,
So
to
each
then
subcommittee
bringing it back.
can get
to the
together, put their
bigger-
heads together,
Exactly.
bring
right.
ideas, bring them to the group, talk
Exactly.
about them as a group.
Exactly right.
And that way there's transparency. So everyone's on
Totally
the same
agree
page.
with you. I totally
That's it.
agree with you. And also, because I do a lot of spreadsheets, I have no problem.
I appreciate that. You did that amazing job on the other one because you could literally go through it and check the box.
Well, actually, Dale had a lot to do with that.
You guys did a wonderful job.
So, so I don't mind capturing progress in a spreadsheet format.
I don't mind you capturing it either.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Jim.
we went an hour and 20 minutes. I think this was an orderly and good discussion, and I want to keep it more and more like this with motions. Hopefully, she's got it all. She'll put it all in minutes. And then others will know what we're talking about when they get sent the copy of the document.
Judge Zonderman, I would like to just say one more thing that I think is really important in terms of scheduling, because it says number 5, next meeting date and time. We've already discussed at great length days, and we've done the doodle poll and whatever. I'd like to recommend that we meet on Monday mornings, because on Monday mornings, it seems that everybody can make it. And it's important to have as many people here as we possibly can, because everybody's voice is important. So my recommendation is that it be on Monday, except when there's a legal holiday, and then we'll work around that and modify it, that it be on Monday from 8 until 9.
Let's hear what everybody thinks about that.
Is it the first Monday? Because we have committee meetings on the first Monday of the month.
It doesn't
If
have to
not-
be the first Monday of the month. What's
Okay.
important is the day. That Monday is the
Okay.
day.
You know, maybe you're
8:29?
suggesting a second Monday of the month? Anybody have a problem with the second Monday of the month?
I don't have a problem. No. I mean, I don't have a problem at all. I mean, if you just presented that in another day, or even if everyone can agree on that day, that's fine. If there's 2 days, one works better, you know what I mean? We just, the doodle thing worked out good. The problem was on the last email, myself and Judge Zonerman were actually left off of it. So we were here on Monday thinking the meeting was that day. But because of the spam filter, town's got a good computer system, spammed it right out. We were here, we showed up, and there was no meeting. So that we just need to get that falls on the scheduling, getting it all knocked out, but I don't have a problem.
So I'm proposing the second Monday of the month would be the meeting time. Do we have enough
Well,
people
I'll
here?
ask for a vote for that in a minute. Let me ask Yasmin a question. Is your assistant, Abacus, likely to remain in his position? Or how is that going to be determined? Does the new person going to have, you'll recommend to her anyway? She's a good person.
So the confidential secretary to the supervisor is exclusively an appointment made by the town supervisor. So I have every expectation that the incoming supervisor Puccioni is going to be making a determination relatively quickly, I would assume, at the beginning of her term, as to who she will be appointing to the position of confidential secretary to the supervisor. So,
Okay, just when I get in the habit of calling Mr. Backus,
yeah.
we'll be changing it or not. I don't know.
Right,
well,
and that
well,
I can't answer. But generally speaking, for scheduling of the meetings, so anytime you need to get and make sure that the meeting and the agenda is posted to the website, that goes to Seth Goldstein. So as long as you're CCing him on that communication, he will know to post that information to the website. So that's how you're going to communicate, making sure that's made open to the public. And so that's our most front-facing means of communicating that is through our website, and that's where we post all of our open public meetings.
when you say post it,
Mhm.
I mean, we get letters from the town on various things. Trash will be collected after the snowstorm or not. Is that going to come to us? Or when you say posted, because I'm not in the habit for about 14 years. No, well, I'm not in the habit of reading whatever it is published.
It won't be a town-wide communication, so we do have a subscriber group that we push notifications to for, any number of different things that are happening in the town. If it's the will of the task force that these meetings are also pushed out through that communication mode. So if you want to make sure that these meetings are not only public and posted to the website, but that you're inviting people to attend, that listserv can be used. But it won't generally be distributed unless that's communicated ahead of time to push it out to that subgroup. But if you're wondering about how you yourself will receive the notification, that's that email chain that we've all been on. And we've had some issues, as Jeff Relation spoke of. I have the same issue where we have very, very strong spam filters here at the town, and sometimes you might not get a communication because it's gone to your spam. And that happens. But whoever the individual is on this task force who would like to be in charge of sending the notification around, I think generally it's Allison as our secretary who will be sending the notification of the meeting with the agenda and the minutes attached. So that really would be her task almost exclusively, unless somebody else wants to take over that task, to make sure that the entire group is being communicated to clearly about what day and time the meetings are occurring, that an agenda is attached, that the minutes are attached, and therefore will be conferring directly with Seth to make sure that all of those things make it to the website.
Well, Allison will see the minutes,
Mhm.
and she'll see that we chose the second Monday.
And I would advise too, as we do in our other committees, to circulate a calendar that has all of the months with the date laid out. And that way,
Okay.
it's just something that's a good housekeeping item for everybody to have that. And that way, you know with certainty that a date is going to be occurring. And really, the only time it should be changed is if there's an emergency or a holiday or something else that occurs.
Good. Is there any other business before we adjourn? Hearing none, declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good, John.